Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm José.
And we've seen Bad Times at the El Royale.
Yes, we have.
A film I was really, really looking forward to. It's a sort of noir, pastiche, Tarantino-y, sort of comic, twisty, fun, oddball, full of stars, romp.
Romp.
It's a romp. I was hugely looking forward to it. It's written and directed by Goddard, who is probably best known for co-writing with Joss Whedon and directing The Cabin in the Woods.
Yes, which I like very much.
A hugely popular,
yes.
Again, kind of pastiche of horror in all its various forms, but particularly the horror sort of staple of a bunch of kids go into the woods and start dying. That was the film. That's what it was, lovingly mocking and taking apart. This, in some respects, is doing something similar with crime thrillers, and particularly kind of, I would say, sort of post-Tarantino inflected crime thrillers, where the stories get chopped up, and there's a playfulness in the way that the stories are kind of chapterized.
Yes.
And you bring an ensemble together and then concentrate on different parts of them individually, and then you kind of bring them together. And there's an awful lot of kind of referentiality, if that's a word, to genre. This is like doing the same thing over again. Like Tarantino was already doing that, and now he's doing it with Tarantino in a way. I don't want to go too heavy on Tarantino, but I felt a lot of it from the start. I mean, from the very beginning, actually, it felt like Four Rooms, which Tarantino was one of the four directors of. And I didn't have an awful lot to base that on, really, other than it was kind of in a hotel. I mean, but nonetheless, it felt it had that kooky, offbeat feel of something's going to happen tonight.
Yes,
in this hotel.
Yes. I think it's interesting that you mentioned the Tarantino because, in a way, and let's get this out right away. I mean, I like the film very, very much. But I think it's a great screenplay that isn't delivered with the visual verve or the movement or the,
energy or life or
vitality
vitality
of the Tarantino film.
I agree.
So that said, I think the screenplay is fantastic. It's very playful and fun, and the actors kind of are magnificent, I think, really. So there's a lot of play and enjoyment to be had out of it. And actually, I also found the end moving. Yeah. So I think it works on all of those levels, and yet
it's lacking a certain something.
Yes.
To give the basic idea of the plot, I felt when I watched the trailers that they were giving far too much away, and it kind of turns out that's not the case. There are lots and lots of questions that the film asks of its of its characters and their backstories and so on and so forth that are not actually approached by the trailers at all. Which I was thrilled by, because I hate when trailers give loads of stuff away, and I was thrilled to find out that there was so much more the film had to offer. The basic idea is there is this hotel/motel. I mean, you do drive up to some of the to the rooms, but it's kind of a more high class than a motel.
It's meant to be like, what was it called? Harrah's at Lake Tahoe.
Right.
The famous nightclub where Sinatra and Judy Garland and Dean Martin played. And it was like straight on the Nevada, California side. So all of the gambling had to be done on the Nevada side. Yeah.
Oh, is that actually
it's a real place.
Oh, right, I didn't know.
It's a place. It's a place where I think it was run by the mob, by Giancana, and Sinatra had a piece of it, and it's a place that I think John Kennedy partied at. I mean, I don't know how to what extent this is popular knowledge now, but it was like I don't know, it was in the air in American pop culture at a certain point. Yeah,
Right.
so the same way that the Manson character and all of those things that the film draws on.
Yeah, so this hotel has a line running right down the middle. It runs down the road approaching it, this big red line right down the middle. It goes straight through the car park and right down the middle of the lobby. And the hotel separating California from Nevada. And on the California side, you can get a drink. On the Nevada side, you can gamble. And the rooms on the California side cost $1 more. You start off with Cynthia Erivo as this singer, sort of soul singer, because it's set in 1969. Sort of soul Motown-y singer meets a priest played by Jeff Bridges, who I just adore. I mean, I love the way he delivers lines these days. Basically, ever since he started to get properly old, he just delivers every line like he's had way too much to eat for lunch and he needs to let out his belt. Like he starts off every line with a that sort of thing. I love the way he speaks now. And they, he sort of is slightly flirting with her, and she's not too into it, but he's friendly enough. They get into the hotel and just no one's there. This place is clearly not what it was. John Hamm is this far too chirpy, annoying sort of wasp of a regular, who is. It's a vacuum cleaner salesman, and he's all giving them business cards, and he's chirpy, and he's saying, "Oh, this place was great. I used to come in." A cast of characters gets introduced, and again, I mean, I suppose like a Tarantino, like the Hateful Eight, like a bunch of people who all have their own stories get stuck in this place. They're all there for one reason or another, and their interactions, sort of bear fruit. There's not too much to say really further than that without spoiling it, because it gets into who the characters are and the reasons that they're there and the backstories and so on and so forth.
And this is actually a film that we don't want to spoil, actually, because I think, like I said, I think it's a film that has a great screenplay and actually surprises at what happens and the way that the film backtracks. So you get the history of each room in a way and the person in it, right? And then kind of when they go on to the next room, there are flashbacks, that kind of fill you in on different aspects of the story. So,
and you also when it tells one story, and then as it moves to another, you see a part of a previous one shown from a different angle or something. Like these stories are coexisting at the same time. It's not a perfectly chronologically told story.
That's right. So the structure of the film is part of the great pleasure. It does actually surprise and it fills in. I mean, it's a film that's 141 minutes long, and it just seemed to whiz by. Yeah, to me.
A lot of it did. That was certainly the best section. Let's say that's the end of spoiler territory. That is we really are going to talk about stuff that is plot detail that would spoil it.
Do you think it should though?
No, I think it's bound to come up, and we shouldn't. That's.
But before we do so, let me ask you: what do you think the film's about? What are its themes?
Memory, I think. I think it comes up a lot, and I think that's one of the reasons that it has an interest in flashbacks as well. And Jeff Bridges' character, sort of his memory problems, and I think it's.
But that's just the Jeff Bridges character.
No, but I think it's because there's also there's what's been happening in the other characters' sort of lives. And I think it's not just about memory in terms of like you remembering stuff. It's about the memory of people, or kind of preservation of kind of what's good about people, despite other things. Like everyone in this film has done bad things in a way, or can be lured to do bad things.
Well, I think that's what the film's about. Because every time that the question of memory is only really in so far as everybody in this film has done terrible things, right? And terrible things that they want to forget or they want to be redeemed for. And that's kind of when the film's flashbacks or, all of those elements kick in. So, I don't think it's about memory per se.
Not about literally memory, but about the continuing impact that those memories have on your life, and your wish or inability to forgive yourself, that sort of thing.
Yes, or the damage that's been done to you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I think that's what all the characters have in common in a way.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say...
Except for the Chris Hemsworth character.
This is what I was going to say. Like, I don't think there's one single reading that captures every character, but there's a combination. There's like a Venn diagram that covers the lot of them. They all share something with someone else,
Yes.
if not necessarily everybody. But there are characters who are damaged, and there are characters who are more likely to do damage. But that like in itself is something that they are not necessarily happy with. Actually, probably the character that maybe doesn't fit into that at all is the John Hamm one.
I suppose.
Let's get out of spoiler territory. We are going to have to talk about plot spoilers.
Right.
We are no longer in spoiler-free territory.
Well, I mean, it's true. So, because there are in a way two outsiders. Yeah. So John Hamm is just an FBI agent, and basically he only gets into trouble because he tries to do the right thing and against orders tries to rescue this what seems an innocent young girl who in fact turns out not to be innocent at all, and therefore he gets killed soon. So he doesn't have a backstory. Yeah, he doesn't have a memory, or we're not given his past. And Chris Hemsworth is a Charles Manson-like cult leader, and also we're not given a backstory. We see him in the past, but only as part of one of the girls' stories. Yeah, one of the stories of this young girl who's been abused and who's been protected by her sister, and who now finds herself in a cult, and the sister tries to go and rescue her. So, we see him in a flashback in terms of how they meet. And Chris Hemsworth is really kind of presented as someone who gains all this power as a cultish figure, but really mainly because of the sexuality he exudes.
Yeah, he's presented actually as like a year 2000 beach rat.
Yeah.
I said to you in the cinema, like, clearly he's incredibly sexy, but there's no way that his chest looks like that in 1969. I know. It would be so hairy.
Actually, I didn't like his performance at all.
I wasn't hugely a fan of it, but I think it's just something it's a nuance I didn't like about the film that I think it could have perfectly well got away with a 1969 sexy version of Chris Hemsworth, and made it funny.
What made me a little bit despair, because, I think Chris Hemsworth is a very good actor, and he's very charismatic, and I like him very much. But I think he's becoming one of those actors whose idea of giving a performance is transforming his body, right? So it's very clear that he's lost a lot of weight, and he's become a lot leaner. He doesn't look like Thor. But on the other hand, he's clearly someone who still goes to the gym 4 hours a day, right? Yeah, and his idea of giving a performance is actually just to have gotten leaner, right? I don't like anything else that he does. I don't like the way that he reads his lines. I don't like the way that he dances. I don't like the way that he uses his body. And in fact, outside of having his body, you don't understand why he's so charismatic, and actually the body just can't be enough on its own. So actually, I didn't like that performance.
But maybe the best is yet to come from Chris Hemsworth, because he's basically doing in this film what Matthew McConaughey did for about 10 years in the late 90s and early 2000s, which is just take his shirt off, and that's the same as acting. And now Matthew McConaughey is doing some really, really great stuff.
Yes.
So, maybe it's just a phase.
I loved him in Rush, so, we live in hope.
He's very good as Thor as well, to be fair.
He is very good.
But this is not a stand-up performance, and it's a performance that you would hope would be scene-stealing, because he's basically in charge of an awful lot of the back half of the film.
Yes. One of the things that I want to mention is the soundtrack, because I have mixed feelings about it. On the one hand, I love every single song. It's like 1960s pop music. It's the Supremes and Motown and R&B, and everyone will recognize all of the songs, really. And on the other hand, I don't know if it was the volume or the way that they're put into the film, but they lacked the power and the energy. They didn't bring the power and energy of the original recordings to the scenes that they were in.
No, the scenes, the best kind of examples of music being used in film transforms a scene, and nothing in this film does that, does it? There are times when what's her name, Cynthia Erivo's singing, actually I think comes close to doing that. And it's not just that she sings. I mean, it is used. It's a plot device as well, and it's a character thing as well between her and Jeff Bridges. I mean, I love the part where he said, "Don't sing for Chris Hemsworth's character. He doesn't deserve to hear you sing." That's so beautiful.
It is, and he's so great. My God.
But there are times when the music, I mean, the music elevates certain scenes, and it raises tension. And in conjunction with the editing, I don't remember what song it was, and I don't actually really remember the part of the film it was. But there's just a point where you think, I think it's where Dakota Johnson is sort of just maybe going to shoot the kid who runs the hotel because he knows too much, and the tension is being raised, and there's a song that's been put on the jukebox, and the editing starts to speed up, and you think this is going to happen, and the music, it contributes to that. So it's not like the music is useless in that sense, but it doesn't define anything in the way that it could.
I mean, the music is great. Actually, it's a truly great score, but it's not used inventively, and often it's just used as a background context to something else, rather than activating something else, or being used in conjunction to transform something else. So
it feels like the film just doesn't have an instinct for that. It's not like it wasn't trying.
Yeah,
but it doesn't have an instinct for it.
I actually feel that the film, and again, I'm going to sound contradictory because I do like it very much, but actually I think part of the problem is that the film doesn't seem to have an instinct for cinema. So as I said, the screenplay I think is really, really good. But on the other hand, I don't know if you noticed, but almost everything is shot at eye level.
Yeah.
Kind of, there's no variation of angles, kind of, there's no attempt to kind of create something with the way that you show something. It's odd.
Yeah, I agree. There's a great kind of sense of visual design in the sets. Yeah, and the production design, I think, is wonderful, and you certainly get a sense of the era. I mean, you get this really rich sense that this hotel was something 10 years ago. In the late 50s. And early 60s, like, this place was the place to be. You get that, and it's not anymore. It's on its last legs, and it's the world has changed around it. And the film does a little bit of sort of Nixon on the TV that gives you this sense that like time has moved on.
Yeah,
it's
and
no
that's
longer
already
the
10
era.
years later.
Exactly, it's no longer the era of this place, and so it's this kind of style that hasn't changed, but is now dated.
Yes,
that's great. But you're right. I mean, it's a really good way of putting it that a film doesn't have a cinematic instinct. It's not captivating enough visually.
Yes.
Which is a problem. And I think in some senses, I think the pacing is not great. So I think I was hinting at saying the section of the film, basically the first half, I suppose, or just after the characters have just when things start to get. When questions start to be raised about the true nature of what's going on here, when John Hamm gets into his honeymoon suite and starts opening the phone and finding microphones all over the place, and so that's when the film starts to get so interesting, which is very early on. Questions start to be asked. You go, who the hell is John Hamm? Why does he know to get into the phone? Why does he know to look for all these things? Why are there two different microphones? How does he know? And then he gets underneath the hotel or in the kind of back room, which you see in the trailer, where there's all the two-way mirrors, and he can look into every room and hear what's going on. What the hell's going on here? And also, why are these people doing these various things in these rooms? So, all of a sudden, the film just has so many questions, and your imagination runs wild with possibility. And once questions start to be answered, I don't think that any answer the film gives can be as good as the tension raised by what the questions are. That's an issue I had with the film.
Okay, well, I can see that.
And as to the pacing question, which I started off with, it's that once the film settles down a little bit, which I think is really when Chris Hemsworth joins in the fun, the film I think slows to a crawl.
Well, you see, I think for me that to me it was enjoyable throughout, but I really began to have problems once John Hamm discovers so this motel or hotel, which at one point been really, really fancy, has really been outfitted as a place for blackmail. So it's got this back room, and it's got cameras, and the mirrors are all two-way mirrors. And actually, you can press a button and get the sound from the other room or stop the sounds from the other room. Now, just think of what an imaginative director could do with all of those possibilities, right? With the mirror, with the see-through, with the shutting and starting of sound, with this back corridor, that is just a corridor, but it could be full of surprises. Somebody could come in at any time, right? Or is there some tension? Maybe, part of the two-way glass might have been scratched and actually something could be seen through. I mean, there's all kinds of possibilities, visual, and actually in terms of creating suspense, or actually of, creating tension with sound, that fantastic idea of having that corridor could have been used for, and it's nothing. You just see it as like a corridor, right?
Well, I mean, I think that's right. Like really, what I'm saying is the questions that raises about what the hell's going on and what is going to then happen are really in there at script level.
Yes.
They're not raised by the way the story is told, and I think it's I like it's a long take when John Hamm is looking at the various rooms and he walks between them. He sees Jeff Bridges in the one digging up the floor, and he sees so I'm going to keep forgetting her name because I don't know who she is. Cynthia Erivo in the next.
She's a Broadway star who was in The Color Purple, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I've looked her up, but I just don't know her, so I need to learn her name. Cynthia Erivo in the next room, singing. She's rehearsing, practicing her singing, and he turns that sound on, so you hear this the whole way through. And then a couple of rooms down, it's Dakota Johnson bringing in this tied up girl, her sister. You don't know that, but and he kind of goes back and forth between them, and as interesting as that was, like you are kind of thinking like, his attention should be divided. I mean, he's learning about this nuts thing that's happening in this hotel. There's this crazy back room. What the fuck? And then also like how is he going to kind of split his time between the various rooms? He seems to spend most of his time listening to Cynthia Erivo sing, which I would be like definitely looking at one of the other rooms.
But I thought it was also a sign of that scene that you just mentioned. I thought that was also a sign of what a poor director Drew Goddard is, because you have the Dakota Johnson character who's bringing in this teenage girl all tied up into this room, right? And you're seeing it from a two-way mirror. So you see that the motel door is open and there's just her car visible, right? And there's no sense of tension. She's not peeking out to see if anyone's looking or if anyone's spotting her, bringing anybody out of the car. The door just remains wide open. And you think, actually, just by shutting that door or by looking out, or, you could create all kinds of tension. No, the door's just wide open.
You're kind of learning in a very calm way. And I think the fact that it's done in a long take where the camera moves back and forth up this corridor following John Hamm, and then it moves in on one of the two-way mirrors at times, so you see whatever the action is on the other side, and you see John Hamm's reflection in it, and it's like that's isn't that clever? It's not that clever.
No.
Unfortunately, it's kind of, I mean, it's nice enough, and I guess it would be a missed opportunity if he didn't do it, but it's not doing much.
Yeah, visually the film doesn't offer much, and I mean, I agree about the set design and all that. That is really great, but it's not filmed excitingly.
No. And if it is pastiching classic noir, and if it is pastiching Tarantino's noir, I mean, visual possibilities are just endless, like, and they should be. And actually, there are like specific shots you should be copying, if nothing else,
or referencing.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, it doesn't do that.
No.
Can we talk a little bit about the performances? Because actually, I want to backtrack a little bit. I was saying, how great I thought they were, and then I thought, well, actually, Chris Hemsworth, I didn't think was that great. And really, I mean, Dakota Johnson was fine, but she wasn't great.
I like her presence. I like the sense that she has, and this is not the first one that I've seen her kind of do this in. That she has this sense of being like a quiet one in the room, but one who knows better than other people. Do you know what I mean?
I do.
And I like that sense she brings to her character in this.
She had very good moments at the end, with the sister that she's been trying to rescue and who doesn't try to rescue her back. But I also thought that John Hamm, for the first 10 minutes of the film, I thought he's never going to get over being John Draper, really.
Don Draper.
Well,
I've said this before, I think that John Hamm, having seen him do other stuff since Mad Men, which he's fantastic in, obviously, I feel like he's never ever going to be able to play a character who is not set in the 1960s.
But this is.
Exactly, that's my point. But I think he's kind of fine in this. I once I got over, he was annoying, but actually then I started to sink into that is the point of him.
Noel, I think, though as we later learn, it isn't quite. So I think he got into a rhythm as the film unfolded, or maybe I got into his rhythm, as the film unfolded. But I kind of, the first 10 minutes or so, I thought, what's he trying to do? And it seems a bit jarring, and he's trying to be funny and jokey, and it's not quite working. And
it did kind of work for me, I've got to say. It did take me a second to acclimatise, but then I think that the tone that he's helping to set is interesting because he's so at odds with the other characters that you get the feeling that like this is an oddball kind of movie. Actually, it's not that he's out of place. Like everything is kind of off kilter in this. So I liked that. I mean, in a way, this is a film that sort of has so many stars because none of these stars' careers relies on this film doing well. In a way, they can have fun with it. They're all little character pieces.
I know, but on the other hand, I did think that Jeff Bridges was completely great. That like his line readings and his gestures and his way of conveying like kind of so much in so many different ways was, I just thought, fantastic, really.
He's served really well by the script and also by Cynthia Erivo when he acts opposite her. Those two share great scenes. Yes. Particularly the one in the bar. He invites her out for dinner, and when he talks about his memory problems.
Yes.
I mean, you know at this point, like, this guy, I don't really trust this guy. He's up to something, but you believe every minute of that, and which is lucky that it turns out to be true, because I would hate it if he delivered this kind of really sad story about not knowing who he is at times, because he forgets literally where he is and who he is. He delivers it so beautifully, and I would hate if the film then went, no, he was making that up to con Cynthia Erivo's character. I would hate, and so I'm so glad that it's like, no, this is actually for real. There is something real underneath here.
I thought the scenes between Jeff Bridges and Cynthia Erivo were very good. I thought the scenes with Cynthia Erivo on her own were actually not as good as I would have liked them. The whole thing where she's singing and he's trying to uncover the money on the beat. I thought she was stiff, and it's partly motivated because, she's got something else going on. But, she could have pretended she was looking at herself in front of the mirror and dancing, or, it just kind of, she seemed stiff in some moments. The person who I thought was entirely Jeff Bridges' equal is Louis Pullman.
As the young lad, the concierge.
Yes. Yeah. He's the bellboy, the concierge, everything in this hotel, and also he is the person who's filming all these people, and then you find out that he's a junkie, you know, and he's a Christian, and he's been in Vietnam. So, and he's just fantastic in every aspect of it. You know, he's fantastic as the shy and clumsy, you know, employee, right, who has to give a rote reading of employee, you know, welcome, right? He's fantastic when he's caught out and he feels guilt at what he's doing. You know, he's fantastic in the action scenes. He's fantastic in the dialogue bits where he's trying to find redemption from Jeff Bridges, right? Like, I mean, you know, the scenes of them two together, and particularly the final scene, is just beautiful.
Yeah, he doesn't put a foot wrong, and he's fantastic. And I don't know what else he's been in. He has this innocence and sort of shyness about him, which is really sweet. And then you see him, John Hammond covers him with a needle in his arm, slumped to sleep, and you go, fuck me, okay, so something's up with this kid.
Yes.
I'm interested in this. I mean, he is probably the most, he's the richest drawn character of a lot of them. You know, there are, every character, there's no character, apart from, I suppose, John Hamm and Chris Hemsworth, there's no character that's just a sketch. Yes. You know, every character has something to latch onto, and something that the actor has to latch onto as well. They can bring out, but none has as much that in their character as the bellboy.
Yes.
And God, he's blinding, and he's absolutely heartbreaking. There's no way that he's sort of the most blameless one of the lot, really.
Yes.
And yeah, he's had an awful life. He's killed all these people. You find out much later that he's counted everyone he killed in Vietnam, and the tragedy is that he was so good at it.
Yes.
He's a crack shot, and so when there's a real subtlety in when he has the opportunity to save everybody at the end by picking up the gun and killing all the baddies that are there to you know, the Chris Hemsworth guys, the Manson family. He's saying, I can't do it, I can't kill more people, despite the fact in this case it is clearly the right thing to be doing. And when Cynthia Erivo says, I get it, you've seen his flashback now, it cuts right in, you see his flashback of being someone who was very good at killing people in Vietnam. And Cynthia Erivo says, it's okay, you don't have to. And then he does. It's a sequence which I think is very well done, actually, because it could be heroic. It could be the heroic kind of, the guy who's good at this is now saving the day by killing everyone in one shot with these amazing skills. And it's clearly, that is what it is, but it's not heroic. It's just, the subtlety is that he has this freedom. He does, now that he's been assured he doesn't have to, he can. Yeah. He can do the right thing, because in this particular case, it's not the same. And I feel for him, feel for him so much.
Well, he draws you to it. Actually, you see, so I thought there were two things, because I think Jeff Bridges is just extraordinary, because he makes you understand and feel all of these things with a nothing of a character. I mean, when you're talking about characters not being fleshed out, you know, I mean, he's a concept, or he's a plot point even, you know. So he brings all of these things through, you know, his body, his face, the way he says things, you know, kind of little gestures. You know, he really kind of makes you understand somebody, you know, who was once powerful but who's forgetting, right? But who's, it's just he makes you feel and understand this person, but it's not in the script, really. You know, he creates that, whereas the young boy has, like, you know, I mean, he's got a wonderful character to play, but then, my God, does he play it? You know, so I think for me, those were the two great performances in the film, because then the young girl who falls in love, who runs away from home and falls under the clutches of Chris Hemsworth, I think her name is Kaylee Spaney. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. She's got a lovely quality, you know, this kind of, you know, Lolita, innocent, slightly mad, you know, and then you see how she can be edged into violence, right? So I think she does evoke that, but on the other hand, the character is also a cliche, and then there's nothing there, right? So there's not much to be done, though I think, she has the right look, and she does it well, right? So it's an interesting thing, because actually so much of it rests on the performance, and as I said, none were bothersome. Like, even when I'm talking about
Chris Hemsworth
and
John Hamm,
right? Like, they're not terrible, right? But I just thought they were lacking, really. So anyway, I thought kind of that was interesting how within this ensemble, then you really can extrapolate what is truly marvelous, and they really are marvelous. They're kind of a great pleasure in the film to watch.
I think it's just a little bit unfair to the script to describe Jeff Bridges' character as so much of a sketch, because I think you're right. There's not an awful lot there, but that scene that I mentioned, that the what he says to Cynthia Erivo's character about his memory loss, like it's an amazing performance, and it elevates what's there. But you can't do it if it's not on the page, and it's a well written scene.
Okay,
it's a really well written scene.
Fair enough. And there's the death scene as well, right? Which is it's written.
Yeah.
So.
But you're right that his performance elevates everything.
Yeah. So is there anything more that you want to add?
I guess I kind of was trying to think about. It sounds like a silly question to ask in a way, but like, what is the point of the film, or what is the?
Well, that's
it's always, and obviously, like, the point is it's a lot of fun, right? And it's worth it for its own sake. It is good fun, despite the. I have issues with the pacing. We have issues with little bits here and there. Overall, it's really good fun. But I guess in terms of sort of how does it maybe reflect on morality and violence and the way they are depicted and what they kind of mean? Is the film empty in that respect, or is it?
Well, at the beginning when I was asking you, what's it about? What are its themes? That's kind of partly what I was trying to get at, because, if it's trying to tell us something about redemption, about kind of, people forgiving themselves and kind of being forgiven for actions that are considered illegal and immoral, I actually don't think the film has interesting things to say about it, or does it in an interesting way.
No.
And of course, the thing also is that the film, the sins are a very different kind. So presumably, with the lounge singer, you get the impression that she was bullied into sleeping with, this producer, right? And has regrets about it. And she's met kind of many men, like the Chris Hemsworth character. The Chris Hemsworth character is somebody who's very frail and manipulates people sexually into kind of doing what he wants, but he's got no remorse. Even the John Hamm character is lying about who he is, to fulfill a mission. The Jeff Bridges character, he robbed a bank. Well, that's not the end of the world. That's not the same as, having killed 123 people, right? And then there's also something that's thrown in, because you see the hotel was used as a place to blackmail people, right, with these two-way mirrors and so on. So there's like a MacGuffin about, a film of a very important person, right, that was never handed in to the FBI.
To the BFI.
To the BFI. So, and really the suggestion, and certainly if it plays on the Harris legend, is that it would have been it would have been John F. Kennedy. But that's really like a MacGuffin, really. So
the film has its MacGuffins. I mean, the thing about the bag of cash under the floorboard.
Yes.
Classic, perfect.
Yes.
That's one. I think that's one of the first indications that this is like, like I say, a romp.
Yes.
There's money under the floorboard, and someone has to go and get it.
But the thing about romps, the thing is, we're talking Hitchcock here. Then Hitchcock is always a romp in the sense that he's always fun and he's always exciting. But there's always more to Hitchcock than just fun and excitement and this extraordinary use of technique, right? You kind of he has things to say. I'm not sure that this film does.
No, and also, as you say, that the lack of cinematic joie de vivre is an issue.
Well, nous really,
Yeah.
So I think, because
that's not something that Hitchcock lacks. It's not something that Tarantino lacks. And think of how another director, as you say, would have just had the instinct for that and made something.
I think this is a film that might, at a certain point, gain a cult following, because I can imagine it playing on television, and it's got so many wonderful scenes, that I could imagine it being on and you being drawn into the Jeff Bridges character, or and so on. And actually, I also suspect that it's a film that will play better on television, just because it is so
dialogue and character rich.
Yes,
and doesn't rely on cinematic flair to.
It doesn't rely on editing or lighting or angles or even much camera movement to convey meaning or feeling. So it's really the structure, the actors, and the dialogue that carries it.
And one other thing I would say, which again, to go back to Tarantino for a comparison point, and I think something where this film is better than Tarantino, although I think it comes off worse in so many ways really that we've mentioned. But in this case, when Tarantino writes dialogue, he always writes his own voice. Tarantino's characters always speak like Quentin Tarantino, and in this, characters speak like characters. That's the one thing about Tarantino that is so deeply indulgent, and it's why he always bloody puts himself in them as well. Which that's worse than the Stan Lee cameos.
Yes,
at least Stan Lee only has 4 lines.
But and that reminds me, actually, we must say that one of the characters who plays like this kind of sleazy producer, who he says something like, how much I get paid, and how much you get paid, and then if you slept with me, blah. That's Xavier Dolan, and he's wonderful, right? So I just thought it's kind of worth highlighting because everybody really knows Xavier Dolan as the wonderkid Canadian filmmaker of all of those extraordinary films that won prizes at Cannes and so on. But he is also famous as an actor, and he is incredibly good in this one scene that he's got here, actually. Just the one, but he's excellent.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good.
So he did Tom at the Farm. Because I've seen them all, but my memory shit. He's directed 10 films, my God. So I Killed My Mother, Heartbeats, Lawrence Anyway, Tom at the Farm, Mommy was a big hit. I think that's the one that won the prize at Cannes. He did the video for Adele, the Hello video, and It's Only the End of the World, and Matthias and Maxime to Come. So it really is kind of an extraordinary filmography for a very, very young person. And then he was really, wonderful in this performance, so kind of very impressive. Well done, Xavier.
I hate young people who are successful. As to the box office, I'm just having a quick look. The production budget of Bad Times at the El Royale is said to be $32 million.
Well, it's a pretty low budget for a studio film, I suppose.
It was kind of getting to sort of middling, but it's the cast and the set, isn't it?
Well, if you think that the budget for A Star Is Born was 68 or something like that, it's half that budget. So
yeah, Oh no, I mean it's like I say, yeah, it's certainly on that kind of cheaper side. What it's taken in 2.5 days, 3 days, 2.5, I suppose, because it's still midday in America. Is $11 million worldwide.
Yes, but that's okay. It'll make its money back.
It'll make its money back. It'll. I think you're right. It'll have a decent sort of afterlife when it hits home media.
Yes.
It's the kind of film people will sort of say, "Oh, did you ever see this? Oh, you got to catch it. It's on blah 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 Netflix."
And to be honest, I would recommend it. I think it's great fun. I think it's the kind of film that'll be more fun for boys. And also, I do kind of also mean boys. Yeah, like kind of, I think if you're over 40, you might find, more lax.
You might find it a little bit juvenile.
A little bit juvenile and a little bit thin. But that said, I do think it's I found it great fun and I recommend it.
Yeah, I found it decent fun. I think like I say, that second half or final third of the film began to really tail off for me when Chris Hemsworth is in charge of that what should be such a huge sort of climactic scene at the
he
craps
drops
table.
the ball. I think
it's also the direction as well. There, I mean, if you think about like the dinner table scene in Killer Joe, for instance, when
I think the two films aren't even comparable. Really.
No, but you know what I mean. Like, I think there's a similar tone that it could have been. The tension around that table is vast, and there's nothing.
To be fair, you see, I think all of the other sections of the film also rely on the actors, and the thing is that the other actors carry the ball, and then when it comes to Chris Hemsworth's turn, he drops it.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think the conceptualization of his character is weak. I mean, I think even just not that like they could have done the Manson type character better, just a different type of character would have been better maybe.
Well, but if you have a different type of character, if he's not a cult leader, then the relationship between the sisters doesn't make sense. I mean, you've got to drop those characters as well.
Maybe he's like instead of that he's some sort of powerful guy who the little sister's fallen in with, something like that. There doesn't have to be a cult thing, but it could be some sort of he's incredibly powerful and knows he can get away with anything he wants because he runs the bar. Maybe he's the guy who runs the hotel.
The easiest solution is get a fucking better actor who can do the part.
Yeah. Get Matthew McConaughey.
Because I think the cult figure and so on fits in with the era and the times, and it evokes all of the Manson stuff, and it renders it believable as a situation in a way that requires little explanation.
Yeah, so but there are other. I mean, like I said, I think a mob boss type of thing could also, it's not the only version of that character that.
Well, it doesn't matter in a way. You do it as a mob boss, and then if the actor playing the mob boss doesn't carry it, you have the same problem. I think really the problem here is Hemsworth.
Yeah, that's probably true. So yeah, despite that, I had a good time at bad times at the Royale. And I guardedly recommend it. And it ends on that nice note of a sort of a friendship being formed.
Yes.
But not for long, because he's going to get dementia and die.
Yes, very shortly. But until he does, he's looking very good, Jeff Bridges. I mean, it's quite extraordinary because he must be 70 and he's so handsome and hot, really. Like, he's sexy.
Ooh.
So.
Oh, hello. Are you gay or something?
Yes, does it ring a bell?
I wonder how old he is. I'm just going to find out.
I think he must be 70.
He is 70 or something. He's 68.
Okay, what year was he born? 50?
49.
Okay, so he's 69.
68.
We are 18, so if he's born in 49, would make him 69.
His birthday's in December.
Okay.
And it's not December.
Close enough.
So there you go.
His
dad was Lloyd Bridges.
Yes.
Yeah, I knew that. Yeah.
All right.
It's a trifle, but
fun,
satisfying trifle.
Yes.
A chocolate trifle.
We recommend it. We like truffle. We like chocolate trifles.
Thank you very much for listening. We are on iTunes and SoundCloud, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and eavesdroppingatthemovies.com. And there you go.
Yes, many more bad jokes to come.
Until I join in.
Yeah, right.